The sound of a gunshot echoed through the valley as Zara Palmer urged her exhausted mare forward, the setting sun casting long, menacing shadows across the rocky terrain of western Colorado Territory. It was 1875, and the promise of a new life at her uncle's homestead was fading as quickly as the daylight. Behind her, three riders closed the distance, their intentions made clear by the gleam of revolvers in their hands. "You can't outrun us forever, girl," the lead pursuer shouted, his voice carrying over the drumming of hoofbeats. Zara's heart hammered in her chest as she veered toward a stand of pines, hoping the dense foliage might provide cover. 22 years old and alone in a savage land, she had nothing but the clothes on her back, her mother's gold locket, and the deed to her uncle's property, the same deed these men were determined to steal. "Keep going, Maple," she whispered to her mare, leaning low over the animal's neck. The journey from St. Louis had been grueling, but nothing compared to the terror of the last hour, when these men had ambushed her at the crossroads, claiming her uncle's land now belonged to the mining company. The ground suddenly gave way beneath her horse's hooves. Maple reared with a terrified whinny, and Zara felt herself slipping from the saddle. Time seemed to slow as she tumbled backward, grasping desperately at air, watching her mare scramble to solid ground. The last rays of sunlight illuminated the world in amber as Zara plummeted into the shadowy ravine below. Pain exploded through her body as she struck the rocky slope, tumbling in a desperate cascade of dirt and stones. When she finally came to a stop, wedged against a gnarled tree root protruding from the ravine wall, she could barely breathe through the agony in her ribs. Above her, the men's voices grew louder, then suddenly silenced by another gunshot. "She went over the edge," one of them called out. "Good riddance," another replied. "Let's get back before dark. No one survives that fall." Tears streamed down Zara's dust-caked face as she listened to their horses retreating. The pain in her ankle made movement impossible, and blood from a gash on her forehead clouded her vision. As darkness enveloped the ravine, a bone-deep chill settled over her. She would die here, alone in this foreign wilderness, her dreams of a new beginning buried with her. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes time lost meaning as Zara drifted in and out of consciousness. The distant howl of wolves sent fear spiraling through her, and she tried once more to pull herself upward, only to cry out as fresh pain lanced through her injured leg. Then a flicker of light appeared at the ravine's edge, a lantern swaying in the darkness. Hope and terror warred within her. Had the men returned to confirm her death? "Hello?" a deep voice called down. "Anybody down there?" Zara hesitated, then whispered, "Help." Her voice barely audible even to her own ears. The light grew stronger as the stranger lowered the lantern into the ravine, revealing a man's silhouette against the night sky. "I heard a commotion earlier," the voice continued. "Thought I might check. Hold on. I see you now." The lantern cast its golden glow over her crumpled form, and Zara blinked against the sudden brightness. The man above her cursed softly before securing his lantern to a branch. "Don't you move," he instructed, though movement was the last thing Zara could manage. She watched as he tied a rope to a nearby tree and tested its strength before beginning his descent. He moved with surprising grace for his size, finding footholds where there seemed to be none. When he reached her, his face came into focus, weathered but not old, perhaps 30, with eyes that reflected concern rather than malice. "My name's Isaiah Dixon," he said, crouching beside her, his voice gentler now. "I've got a cabin not far from here." "Those men," Zara whispered, her voice hoarse. "They'll come back." Isaiah's expression hardened momentarily. "Don't you worry about them right now. Let me see how bad you're hurt." His hands were calloused but careful as he examined her injuries, pausing when she winced. "Ankle's bad, maybe broken. Looks like you've got some bruised ribs too, but I don't think they're fractured." He looked up at the darkening sky. "We need to get you out of here before those wolves get curious." He slipped off his leather coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth of it, carrying his scent of tobacco and pine, was instantly comforting. "This is going to hurt," he warned, "but I need to get you up that slope." Before Zara could respond, he leaned down, his face close to hers. His eyes blue as a summer sky held hers steady. "I've got you," he said simply, and something in those words, in the quiet confidence behind them, made Zara believe him. Isaiah fashioned a makeshift harness from his rope, securing Zara against him. The pain was excruciating as he began the climb, but she bit down on her lip, determined not to cry out. His strength was evident in every careful movement, in the steady rhythm of his breathing against her back. When they finally reached the top, he untied her gently and laid her on the soft ground. Her mare stood nearby, tethered to Isaiah's sturdy chestnut gelding. "You found Maple," Zara breathed, relief washing over her. "She found me, actually. Nearly ran me over heading back to the road." He offered a half smile. "Lucky thing, too, or I might not have come looking." Isaiah lifted Zara onto his horse, then mounted behind her, holding her securely against his chest as they rode through the darkness toward his cabin. The structure emerged from the night like a vision, solid logs gleaming in the moonlight, smoke curling from the stone chimney. It wasn't large, but it emanated a sense of sanctuary that brought fresh tears to Zara's eyes. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the simple furnishings. Isaiah laid her carefully on a bed covered with thick quilts, then busied himself gathering supplies, clean cloths, a basin of water, and a bottle of amber liquid. "This'll sting," he warned, pouring whiskey over her forehead wound. Zara gasped, clutching the quilt beneath her. "You're doing fine," he murmured, his fingers surprisingly gentle as he cleaned away the blood and dirt. "What's your name, if you don't mind me asking?" "Zara," she replied through gritted teeth. "Zara Palmer." "Well, Miss Palmer, you're lucky to be alive." He wrapped her ankle with practiced efficiency. "Most folks who go over that edge don't come back up." As he worked, Zara studied him, the broad shoulders beneath his cotton shirt, the dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, the careful concentration in his movements. He didn't look like the outlaws who'd chased her, nor the dandified businessmen of St. Louis. There was something solid about Isaiah Dixon, something trustworthy. "Why were those men after you?" he asked, breaking into her thoughts. Zara hesitated, then decided truth was her best option. "My uncle, Henry Palmer, had a homestead near Silverton. When he died last winter, he left it to me." She swallowed hard. "Those men work for the Silver Peak Mining Company. They claim my uncle sold them the rights before he died." Isaiah's expression darkened. "Silver Peak's been trying to buy up every inch of this valley. Their boss, Victor Holloway, doesn't take kindly to refusal." "I have the deed," Zara said, reaching for her satchel before remembering it had fallen during the chase. "Or I did." "We'll worry about that tomorrow," Isaiah replied, finishing his ministrations. "You need rest now." He moved to a chair by the fire, taking up a rifle that leaned against the wall. "I'll keep watch. You're safe here." Despite her fear and pain, exhaustion soon claimed Zara, the steady presence of her unexpected guardian, lulling her into the first peaceful sleep she had had since leaving St. Louis. Morning brought clarity and fresh pain. Zara woke to find Isaiah at the stove, the smell of coffee and frying bacon filling the cabin. When he noticed her stirring, he brought her a cup of strong black coffee. "How are you feeling?" he asked, helping her sit up. "Like I fell into a ravine," she replied with a grimace that turned into a small smile. Isaiah chuckled, the sound warming something inside her. "Fair enough. Fever didn't set in, which is good news. Bad news is, your ankle's properly swollen now." Over breakfast, Zara told him the full story, how her parents had died of influenza in St. Louis, how the letter about her uncle's death had arrived just as the bank was foreclosing on their modest home, how the promise of land out west had seemed like divine providence. "I've never even seen the property," she admitted. "I just knew I couldn't stay in St. Louis. Not with nothing to my name." Isaiah nodded thoughtfully. "Your uncle's place is Goodland Creek running through it. Decent soil. No wonder Silver Peak wants it." He poured more coffee. "But it's nearly 20 miles from here, and you're in no condition to travel." "I can't impose on you," Zara protested weakly. "It's not an imposition," he replied simply. "Besides, those men think you're dead. That gives us time to figure things out." Over the next week, Zara's strength gradually returned. The cabin, which had seemed rustic at first, revealed itself as a testament to Isaiah's craftsmanship, the furniture handmade, the stone fireplace expertly constructed. He hunted and chopped wood during the days, returning to tell her about the wildlife he'd encountered or the changing colors of the aspens as autumn approached. In the evenings, he read to her from dog-eared books, Emerson, Thoreau, even Shakespeare. His voice, low and steady, brought the words to life in ways Zara had never experienced. When she expressed surprise at his library, a flash of self-consciousness crossed his face. "I wasn't always a hermit in the mountains," he said with a half-smile. "I had schooling back east, before the war." He didn't elaborate, and Zara didn't press. She sensed there were wounds there, deeper than any physical injury. On the 8th day, Isaiah returned from hunting with Zara's satchel, muddied but intact. "Found it by the ravine," he explained, placing it beside her. "Your mare must have knocked it off when she bolted." Zara's hands trembled as she opened it, relief flooding through her when she found the deed still inside, along with her mother's gold locket and the small amount of money she'd brought from St. Louis. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the papers to her chest. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you for everything." Isaiah waved away her gratitude. "No need for that. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Zara replied firmly. "Not anyone. Not those men from Silver Peak." A silence fell between them, comfortable yet charged with something neither was ready to acknowledge. That night, as Isaiah helped her to the table for dinner, Zara's injured ankle gave way. She stumbled against him, her hands instinctively grasping his shirt. He caught her easily, strong arms encircling her waist, and for a heartbeat, they remained frozen, faces inches apart. Zara felt the steady thrum of his heart against her palms, saw the flicker of something warm and dangerous in his eyes. Then, gently, he set her back on her feet. "Careful now," he murmured, his voice rougher than before. "Don't want to set that healing back." But something had shifted between them. A door opened that couldn't be closed again. The next morning, Isaiah announced he needed to ride into town for supplies. "We're running low on flour and coffee," he explained, not quite meeting her eyes. "And I should send word to the sheriff about those men." "Be careful," Zara said, sudden anxiety gripping her. "If they see you?" "They won't," he assured her. "I know how to stay out of sight when needed." After he left, the cabin felt eerily quiet. Zara hobbled around, testing her strength, finding she could manage short distances with the aid of a walking stick Isaiah had carved for her. She made his bed, straightened his books, and found herself lingering over the few personal items scattered about: a tarnished pocket watch, a faded photograph of a solemn family, a military medal tucked inside a Bible. By late afternoon, with no sign of Isaiah's return, worry gnawed at her. Had the Silver Peak men found him? Had there been an accident? The sound of approaching horses sent her heart racing. She peered through the window, dismay washing over her at the sight of 3 riders, not Isaiah, but the men who had chased her. They'd found her after all. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but Zara forced herself to think. Isaiah's rifle stood by the door, loaded as he always kept it. She seized it, hands shaking, and positioned herself where she could see both the door and the window. The men dismounted, arguing among themselves. "Holloway said to burn it down," one said. "Dixon's been a thorn in the company's side too long." "What if he's inside?" another questioned. "All the better," the third replied with a laugh. "Two birds, one stone." They approached with oil lamps and torches. Zara's finger hovered over the trigger, her breath coming in short gasps. She'd never fired a gun before, had never imagined herself capable of violence. But as the men reached the porch, determination steadied her hands. The door crashed open. Zara fired, the rifle's kick slamming against her shoulder. The lead man yelped, clutching his arm as he stumbled backward. "The dead girl's alive!" he shouted. "And she's shooting!" Zara chambered another round, just as Isaiah had shown her during their conversations about hunting. "The next one won't be a warning," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. The men retreated, cursing, but she knew they wouldn't go far. Dragging a chair to brace against the door, Zara positioned herself at the window again, praying Isaiah would return soon. The minutes stretched into an hour, the sun sinking low on the horizon. Then, just as twilight descended, a single shot rang out from the trees, followed by a man's cry. Two more shots followed in quick succession. Silence fell. Zara held her breath, the rifle heavy in her trembling hands. "Zara?" Isaiah's voice called from outside. "It's me. Don't shoot." Relief made her limbs weak as she moved the chair and opened the door. Isaiah stood there, rifle in hand, his expression grim. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, stepping inside and checking her for injuries. "No, I'm fine. I shot at them, but only to scare them off." She gestured toward the trees. "What happened out there?" "I winged one of them," Isaiah replied, setting down his rifle. "The others dragged him off. They won't be back tonight, but they'll tell Holloway." "Then we need to leave," Zara said decisively. Isaiah shook his head. "Not yet. There's something I need to tell you first." He sat heavily in a chair, suddenly looking older than his years. "I know why Silver Peak wants your uncle's land so badly. There's a rich silver vein running right through it, one of the richest in the territory." Zara stared at him. "How do you know this?" "Because I used to work for them," he admitted, not meeting her eyes. "I was a mining engineer for Silver Peak before the war. When I came back, Holloway had taken over, turning the operation into something ugly. Forcing people out, damaging the land." He paused, his expression troubled. "Your uncle found the silver on his property, showed me the samples. I told him to keep it quiet, but somehow Holloway found out." Understanding dawned on Zara. "That's why they're so determined to get the deed." Isaiah nodded grimly. "Your uncle refused to sell. A week later, he was found dead at the bottom of a mine shaft. An accident, they called it." Anger flared in Zara's chest, hot and fierce. "They murdered him." "I believe so. Yes." Isaiah finally met her gaze. "That's why I left Silver Peak. Why I built this place far from town. I couldn't prove anything, but I couldn't be part of it either." Zara processed this revelation, studying Isaiah's face, the regret there, the honesty. "Thank you for telling me," she said quietly. "It doesn't change what you've done for me." Relief softened his features. "We need to get to the county seat in Durango," he said. "Register your deed properly. Speak to the federal marshal. Holloway has the local sheriff in his pocket, but he doesn't control the federal authorities." "When?" Zara asked. "Tomorrow, at first light. It's a 2-day journey, but I know back trails they won't expect us to take." That night, as they prepared for their departure, the air between them was charged with unspoken feelings. Isaiah showed Zara how to load and fire his spare revolver, his hands covering hers as he demonstrated the proper grip. "Like this," he murmured, his breath warm against her cheek. Steady now. Zara turned her head slightly, finding his face inches from hers. This time, neither pulled away. His kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. When she responded, sliding her arms around his neck, the tenderness gave way to something deeper, a hunger that matched her own rising desire. His hands spanned her waist, lifting her against him as if she weighed nothing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Isaiah rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I pulled you from that ravine," he confessed. "Why did you wait so long?" Zara asked, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. A smile curved his mouth. "Didn't seem proper, taking advantage of a lady in distress." Zara laughed softly. "I'm not in distress anymore." She pressed closer, reveling in the solid warmth of him. "And I'm not as proper as you might think." Their second kiss deepened quickly, hands exploring with newfound freedom. Isaiah lifted Zara easily, carrying her to his bed without breaking the kiss. They undressed each other slowly, each touch a discovery, each sigh a revelation. In the firelight, his body was a map of scars and strength, the legacy of war and wilderness etched into his skin. Zara traced them with reverent fingers, learning the story of him through touch. When they came together, it was with a tenderness that belied the urgency of their desire. Isaiah whispered her name like a prayer, his eyes never leaving hers, and Zara knew with sudden clarity that whatever happened tomorrow, this night had changed her forever. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms, Zara told him about her dreams for the land, not just the silver, but a home, a place to belong after years of feeling adrift. "I never thought I'd find that again," Isaiah admitted, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "After the war, everything felt hollow. That's why I came out here, built this cabin. Thought if I could just be alone with the mountains, I might find some peace." "And did you?" Zara asked softly. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Not until a stubborn woman fell into a ravine and turned my quiet life upside down." They left at dawn, traveling on Isaiah's sturdy gelding, with Maple following behind. Zara's ankle still pained her, but Isaiah fashioned a better splint, and the discomfort seemed a small price to pay for their escape. They took a route that followed a steep ridge before descending into a narrow valley, beautiful but treacherous terrain that required all of Isaiah's woodsmanship to navigate safely. "Silver Peak men rarely venture this far into the mountains," he explained as they stopped to rest the horses near a crystal-clear stream. "Too much work, not enough whiskey." Zara laughed, the sound echoing off the canyon walls. It felt good to laugh, to breathe the clean mountain air, to feel alive after coming so close to death. She watched Isaiah as he refilled their canteens, admiring the sure efficiency of his movements. "What?" he asked, catching her gaze. "I was just thinking how glad I am that it was you who found me that night," she replied honestly. A smile softened his weathered face. "Providence, maybe. Or just good luck." They made camp that evening in a sheltered grove of pines, far from any trail. Isaiah built a small, smokeless fire and prepared a simple meal of jerky and hardtack. As darkness fell, they sat close together, sharing warmth and whispered plans for what they would do once they reached Durango. "The federal marshal is a fair man," Isaiah said. "If we show him the deed and tell him about the threats, he'll investigate." "And if he doesn't?" Zara asked. Isaiah's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Then we'll find another way. There's more than one path to justice." The journey to Durango took them through increasingly rugged country. By midday of the second day, Zara's strength was flagging, the pain in her ankle a constant companion. Isaiah noticed her pallor and called for a longer rest, insisting she eat and drink while he scouted ahead. He returned with a grim expression. "Riders, coming up the valley." At least 4 of them. Silver Peak men? Almost certainly. Holloway must have sent reinforcements. Isaiah helped her back onto the horse. We need to move quickly. There's an old trapper's cabin about 2 miles ahead where we can take cover. They rode hard, the sound of pursuit growing louder behind them. Just as the trapper's cabin came into view, little more than a dilapidated shack nestled against a rocky outcropping, a shot rang out, splintering bark from a tree inches from Zara's head. Isaiah cursed, urging the horse forward. "Get inside," he shouted as they reached the cabin, helping Zara dismount and practically carrying her through the door. The interior was dusty and abandoned, but the walls were solid logs, and the small windows offered defensive positions. Isaiah positioned Zara behind an overturned table, pressing his spare revolver into her hand. "Only shoot if they get inside," he instructed, his voice calm despite the danger. "Save your ammunition." He moved to a window, rifle ready. Outside, the riders had stopped just beyond the clearing, using the trees for cover. "Dixon!" a voice called out. "We know you're in there. Send out the Palmer woman and her deed, and maybe we'll let you live." "Holloway should know better than to send boys to do a man's job," Isaiah shouted back. "Go home while you still can." A bullet smashed through the window, embedding itself in the far wall. Isaiah returned fire methodically, each shot deliberate. One of the attackers cried out in pain. For nearly an hour, the exchange of gunfire continued sporadically. Zara reloaded for Isaiah, her hands steady despite her fear. When one of the men tried to approach from the side, she spotted him through a crack in the wall and fired, the bullet striking close enough to send him scrambling back to cover. "Good shot," Isaiah said with grim approval. "But we're running low on ammunition." As if sensing their predicament, the attackers began to advance, moving from tree to tree. Isaiah's rifle cracked again and again, but they kept coming. Then, just as the situation seemed most desperate, the thunder of approaching horses reached them not from the direction of their pursuers, but from the trail leading toward Durango. "Federal Marshal!" A powerful voice boomed across the clearing. "Drop your weapons!" 6 riders appeared, all wearing badges, rifles leveled at the Silver Peak men. The would-be attackers hesitated, then slowly raised their hands in surrender. Isaiah and Zara exchanged looks of disbelief before he cautiously opened the cabin door. "Marshal Thompson," Isaiah acknowledged the lead rider, "your timing is impeccable." The marshal, a bear of a man with an impressive mustache, dismounted with a grunt. "Got word there might be trouble. One of Holloway's men got drunk in a Silverton saloon, started bragging about chasing down some woman for her deed." His sharp eyes assessed Zara. "I'm guessing that's you, madam?" Zara nodded, limping forward with Isaiah's support. "Zara Palmer. My uncle's property." "I know all about Henry Palmer's place," the marshal interrupted. "Been suspicious about his death for some time. Just never had enough evidence to move against Holloway." He gestured to the captured Silver Peak men. "Until now." The journey to Durango was almost anticlimactic after their ordeal. Marshal Thompson and his deputies escorted them, the captured Silver Peak men bound and sullen in their saddles. In Durango, Zara's deed was properly registered at the county office, and statements were taken about the attacks. "Holloway won't go down easily," Thompson warned them as they sat in his office afterward. "Men like him have money, connections." "But not the law on their side," Isaiah pointed out. "Not anymore." The marshal's weathered face creased in a smile. "No, not anymore. I'm sending telegrams to Denver today. With your testimony and his men in custody, we've finally got him." As they left the marshal's office, walking slowly down Durango's bustling main street, Zara leaned against Isaiah's solid strength. "What happens now?" she asked. He looked down at her, eyes crinkling at the corners. "That depends on you. Your land is secure. You could sell it. Use the silver to start a new life anywhere you choose." Zara stopped, turning to face him fully. "And if I choose to stay? To build something there?" Then you'd have a neighbor willing to lend a hand, Isaiah replied carefully. If you wanted. Just a neighbor? Zara challenged, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Isaiah's gaze softened. He took her hands in his, there in the middle of the bustling street. Zara Palmer, I've lived alone in these mountains for 5 years, thinking that's all I needed. Then you fell into that ravine, and nothing's been the same since. He swallowed hard. I love you. I think I started loving you that first night. When you were so brave, despite everything. Zara's heart swelled. Then perhaps this neighbor might consider a partnership, she suggested, her voice husky with emotion. The land has plenty of room for a house, a proper one, with glass windows and maybe even a piano someday. A partnership, Isaiah repeated, his smile widening. I'd like that very much. He leaned down, kissing her there on the street, heedless of the curious looks from passers-by. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing. You know, Isaiah said, tucking her hand into the crook of his arm as they resumed their walk. I'm a fair carpenter, but I've never built a proper house before. Good thing we have Silver to hire help, Zara replied with a grin. And a piano? Isaiah raised an eyebrow. Do you play? Terribly, Zara admitted. But I've always wanted to learn. They spent the night in Durango, in separate rooms at the respectable Palmer House Hotel, though Isaiah found his way to her door long after the other guests had retired. They made plans between kisses, dreaming aloud of the home they would build, the life they would share. 3 weeks later, with Holloway awaiting trial in Denver and the first snows dusting the mountain peaks, they stood together on Zara's land, their land now, since the simple wedding ceremony in Durango the week before. The foundation of their new home was already laid, the silver mine operating under honest management that Isaiah supervised. It's beautiful, Zara said, surveying the valley that stretched before them, golden aspen leaves shimmering in the autumn sunlight. It is, Isaiah agreed, his arm around her waist. Though not as beautiful as the woman who fell into a ravine and turned my life upside down. Zara laughed, leaning into his embrace. You're getting poetic in your old age, Isaiah Dixon. Must be the influence of my wife, he replied, turning her to face him. She's teaching me all sorts of things. As their lips met, snow began to fall, gentle flakes drifting down from a pearl-gray sky, blessing the beginning of their life together. From tragedy had come joy. From a desperate fall into darkness had come the brightest light Zara had ever known. And when Isaiah whispered against her lips, "I've got you," she knew it was true not just for that moment, but for all the days to come.